Hello guys and welcome back. So let's keep on building our structure. So here we're going to try to make a movement work. Okay, now because we're doing a top down, we have to use the AI navigation. AI navigation, however, is designed to be dominated by server. In the default settings, the local machine doesn't have AI at all. Like the AI controller and everything, they live on the server. Let me save this map here, new folder. I'm gonna call this guy maps, and then inside of it I'm gonna call this guy testing map, and the map is kind of small, so let me make it bigger. Okay, alrighty, build the lighting. So in that case, we need to enable navigation locally. Otherwise, we have to ask the server to do everything, like all the movement. The problem is that the setup is, I think it's a little bit locked to the system that they want it to be, to basically say the player will apply input by pressing those WSAD buttons, basically first person shooter kind of setup. Unreal has this legacy of best fit for that kind of game, right? And because of that, right, again, I think no amount of generalization can foresee or predict the future. Like this kind of like a mobile game, what we want to do is that the right click will define the location and you use an AI navigation to go there. And that part of the replication of movement should be done and predicted properly. It's not in the default settings of the character movement component. It doesn't have that interface. It assumes that you use movement input to do that. Okay, so that's in my opinion, a design flaw in the system, but not necessarily to be a design flaw, but it's just tuned to be used for FPS games. In their mind, that's the game, right? So again, that's just in reality, right? Again, no amount of generalization can make everything work. Okay, so problem is, again, if you look at their first-person player controller, the character movement component can predict and also correct its movement from the server's replicated values, so that you have a really smooth movement. Here we cannot interface that with a navigation system. That's the problem. There's no way you can interface the navigation system's move commands to the movement input function call, at least with ease. You could just read through the whole source code of the movement component. You can tweak it so that the navigation system talks directly to the movement input of the movement component. Otherwise, you can't do that. The problem is, you could also just ask the AI on the server to move somewhere, and you replicate the movement back down, right? But then that's going to be kind of like lagging a whole lot. You're not locally predicting it. That's the issue. Okay, so in this case, we want to go for like an easier approach. We're going to do it both locally and on the server, because the movement component nonetheless will be doing the correction if there's something wrong, right? In a normal kind of like network speed, it wouldn't be big of an issue. So we're going to do that. All right, so back here to the character base, and we need to set that up. Okay, all right, so here we need to create a function that's move to location. Okay, and we define a location, const f vector direct location, I guess. Okay, alrighty, and then we do another void server move to location, and that's also taking the same input. Okay, and then this is of course u function server reliable with validation. So we're not clicking on every tick. This shouldn't be a problem, I think. In a real character movement component, the movement update is unreliable because it's updating on every tick. In here, we'll right click, right? So that wouldn't be a big issue. So I'm gonna go ahead and implement these guys. server move to location, of course, it's just return true, I believe. And then for the implementation, we just call move to location right away. And then location. For the move to location, we need to use the AI navigation. Okay, so in that case, we need to have some modules to be added. Right, those things are going to be in the build.cs. Here we need to add the AI module. And then the navigation system. System. Okay. So that's the two systems we need to add for this to work. And also here we need to enable the navigation system in the project settings, allow client side navigation. That has to be in there. And by the way, to use navigation, we have to also have a nav mesh volume, something like that. Can have that in. We can make it real big by scaling this guy up. Hit the P button to take a look at the nav mesh generated. That's good. Okay, some groundwork we need to do. Okay. All right. Let me save this. I believe it's better to rebuild it when we have new modules. So, right. So back here to our player, our character, right? We need to define, or we need to create the definition of the move to location. So we just need to use a U blueprint. Navigation something. I forget that. Simple move to location is called move to location. I forget where that is. AI blueprint helper library. Okay. Yeah, because Redder is helping me to get that. Here you have to write in the including here. Okay. Simple move to location. Okay. And then the controller will be our controller. And then the location will be the location, basically. Right. Okay, controller. Okay. Because I believe it's just asking for a controller, not AI controller. This is gonna get a bit confusing if you go in there and take a look at the function. It's checking a bunch of things. It's adding a pass following component through the controller. If there's none, then it does generate one. Initialize it, find the movement component. I believe it's gonna eventually find the pawn and ask the pawn to get the component based on the nav movement component. In terms of the inheritance tree, the character movement component inherits from the pawn movement component, and the pawn movement component inherits from the nav movement component. So basically, eventually, it's going to reach here and set the movement component governed by pass following component, which will do the navigation and updating the movement component, the character movement component eventually. Right, your character movement component will be the one that gets updated. So it's still going to be using your character movement component, which is good. That means there is some prediction happening. However, problem is it would be better if that can be directly interfaces with the something called the add movement input, because that's the one that really does very good prediction. This is the one that we cannot really use that. Those two are not talking to each other, basically. Okay. Anyway, this should work. So if we just say move to location, we can call this. We need to call this locally. We also need to call this on the server. So we need to do it twice in this case. Ask it to do it locally and ask it to do this on the server. Can be marked as constant. I don't think this will be because we're really changing it, so it's just logically changing it, even we're not changing any pointers or stuff. But I don't know, I wouldn't do that, I guess. Okay. So that will be the character part. So back here now to the player controller. Let's see if this is public. It's protected, so need to move those guys to public just to be able to call it. Right, that's the character part. For the controller part, we need to hook up a input. Let me set up that in the editor. So let's fire this up. So here I'm gonna go to the project settings and then look for the input and add an action here, which is called this guy right click. Okay, and that's gonna be the right mouse button. Okay, and back here to the player controller, we can set it up in the setup input component function, which we don't have. So I guess we can do that in the protected. Setup input component, and here we're gonna say super setup input component, and then check if input component. Right, we can say input component band action. Forget how do I call it. Just I have a really short memory when it comes to this. Like this is really bad. Like I don't remember people's name. Like after 1 second, unless I really carefully wanted to remember that. Right click. Okay. Alrighty. So back here to here, right click. I pressed. And then this a player controller base, right mouse button clicked. Okay, we don't have the function here yet, so we're gonna go ahead and implement that. Very simple. So U function, I believe this has to be U function to be hooked up. Okay, probably can't do constant here. So if get pong and actually we can already, because there's a template version of that. Unreal casting all the time. I think they're a little bit more better than the normal casting we use with you know, dynamic casting. So Unreal casts with its own cast function. This cast function, which eventually does a old school casting. There's no dynamic casting involved, I believe. So I guess it's not that bad to do casting, because if you search for casting, you see casting happening everywhere in Unreal Engine. Okay, so I'm gonna include the character base, and also we just can't do it without casting, because this is locked. The engine is locked to use the Pong as the character class. In this case, we use the Pong class. We have to cast it, otherwise there's no way we can change the engine code. Right, so character base, okay, and then we can do move to location, okay, and then we need to know where the cursor is, right? So I believe it's called trace. cursor something. Get hit result on the cursor, yeah. And then we need to find the trace channel. This is something we can be a bit more robust here, because all the channels here are probably not going to be good. Because there could be all sorts of things you don't want it to be influenced by your right click, right? For example, if there's a building, you could click around the building and on the building. The problem is when you click on the building, that's going to be some location triggered on the roof of the building, and your player character cannot really go there. So you want to ignore that building. So it's probably better to have like a collision channel specifically designed for our right click. So I'm going to go to the project settings and go to the collision and say I'm going to go create a new trace channel, call this guy movement trace. Okay, and accept that. Okay. Oh, actually I'm going to add that. So it's going to be ignoring everything. And we can set up to be only having the terrain or something. That's really the one that will collide with this tracing channel. Okay, right? So in C++, right, we need to then use that channel. Okay, and that channel, of course, if you take a look at the, I believe, configuration, default engine or something, right? Movement trace channel, that's the one just added in when we do that in the project settings. So this is going to be the new line added in when we do that. And you can see it's called ECC game trace channel 1. Okay. So if we go back here, we can just say ECC game trace channel 1. This is kind of like a bit more strange, right? If you go there. Okay. And that's the collision channels ECC game trace channel 1. Okay. So I guess what we can do is we can maybe do a hash define somewhere. Maybe just do it here. Oh, actually, that's not good. Get rid of that. E-collision channel. I believe I have to add that. Game trace channel 1, I believe that's the name for that. Yeah, it's probably better to have that to be something you can be more specific. So we define ECC movement trace to be that. Okay, that way we can just say ECC movement trace. And then what else? Trace complex, I guess. Hit results. Okay, have hit results. Hit. Okay, and pass in hit. And then hit dot blocking hit. Right. And hit dot impact point. Right, that's where we want to move to. And also we do the same thing on the server. Get pong, a character base. I probably will have to figure out a way how to do that with proper local prediction in this case. This is still doing it both here and on the server. But I'm still thinking maybe there is a better way. Yeah. Okay. So that's what we're going to ask it to move locally and move on the server, which will, in this case, if you don't have a lot of lag, will probably be fine. But let's check. So I'm going to have that on right mouse clicked, which is hooked up. What's the problem here? Oh, yeah, I cannot really make it constant because it's not allowing to do that. The signature does not allow you to do that. So I'm gonna get rid of the constant then. Yeah, that will make this guy happy. Yeah, and everything is happy. So let's go ahead and compile this. And of course, in that case, the oh, actually, we need to open the test map. We can also go to the project settings and tell the oh, have some arrows, but the default map will be our testing map. Okay, let me check the arrow here. Oh yeah, I'm not saying address. Oh, sorry about that. I'm not sure what kind of magic is this. I believe could be like a functional thing or std band to pass this as one of the argument, maybe. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, that compiles fine. Okay, and let's try that. So play the game. Right click. Yeah, can't do anything yet because we're not tracing that. Let's go to the collision and tell the collision settings. Where is it? Collision presets to be custom. We wanted to be blocking the movement tracing. Okay, now we're actually moving to there. All right, pretty cool. You can see the movement is kind of like smooth enough. We can check, of course, with some network latency here. So I'm gonna play that. We can tap in the tilde button, and then I believe set packet lag equals to, let's try 80. 80 is kind of like already getting worse. Oh, not allowed in the editor. Okay, that's interesting. I should be able to do that. Packet lagging? Packet dot lag? I forget this command, actually. Yeah, I'll have to check that. But yeah, this is working at least. So maybe next video, after I check it, I'll show you how we can crank up the lagging so that we can probably test that. Okay. We still can do a few more things, like if you want to lock the player control to the character by holding down space, that would be one of the things we can do. But now we have the basic scrolling and movement control. We can probably try that with 2 players. Where does it go? Yeah, you can see they're all replicating to each other nicely. Okay, all right, that's it for this video, and I'm gonna move on to the next one. I'm not sure what to do next. Maybe, yeah, maybe we can talk about something I'm not sure, so I'll have to decide. Okay, see you guys next time.